Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wine with Jimmy channel here. It's a pleasure to have you on board. And here on this channel, we do wine educational videos to help you with your wine qualifications. And here we are looking at the world of WSET Diploma, otherwise known as the Level 4 on wine production. So here is finishing and packaging, talking about packaging and closures. So here we have a 3-part series. As always, part 1 is available as free content to the world, whereas part 2 and 3 are only available on my e-learning portal. That's at www.winewithjimmy.com, where you also find many other useful tools to help you with your wine studies, such as things like flashcards, revision sessions, and of course, much more exclusive video content. As always, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can get in touch with me here at Wine with Jimmy by just commenting on this video as it's free content on YouTube, or direct by the social media that you see at the bottom of every slide, or direct at info@winewithjimmy.com. So on this little mini series, we are looking at the world of packaging and closures. So we'll talk about packaging options on this one. Next one, closures like corks, etc. And then part 3 around oxygen management when packaging, very critical indeed. Okay, so please take a seat, relax, and enjoy the next few minutes on packaging, the most riveting side of the wine industry. So here you are. Now, as you'll see here, the first slide states that most markets will use, of course, the very traditional glass bottles. Wasn't the most important initially. Before the invention of glass bottles, wine was pretty much in any container possible, but normally something like oak vessels. But glass bottles come along and, of course, become very useful for storing wine, for keeping them fresh, and all the things we're going to talk through on the next couple of slides. So most markets use them. There are 2 notable exceptions when it comes to utilizing glass bottles. So first of all, producer markets. So this is where the country will have a fairly large domestic market, which goes very, very local indeed. So we call these producer markets. So France, for instance, where inexpensive plastic PVC containers are used to collect wine from a local delivery for short-term storage and early drinking. So this normally really is something which is stored and sold very locally, and people come and fill up any kind of container. Very sort of classic, traditional way. And then another way is bag-in-box markets. So in some places like Australia, but also some others, certainly some Scandinavian Nordic areas, Sweden, for instance, has quite a bag-in-box market, where in fact in these areas it can be often a significant percentage, even up to 50% or more of the market. And this is mainly because of the decisions of the companies, the main monopolies, for example, that run places like Sweden, for example. So most use glass. So let's go through glass first of all, and talking really about the advantages of glass bottles. So first of all, it is an ideal container for wine, as it is made of inert material. So this means it's not going to impart any kind of taint to the wine, and it's also impermeable to oxygen. So that's important because, of course, in the old days before bottle, it's put into barrel, because barrels will allow some oxidation, and of course they can impart character. But bottles don't do that. So we now have the option today to make very, very fresh, light and bright wines that then are bottled and drunk relatively early in their life due to the inert nature of glass bottles. Also, bottles can be delivered to wineries very easily. There's a big market for this, very readily available, and they can be delivered in a near sterile condition, having been things like shrink wrapped actually when quite hot. So they are actually quite sterile when they get to the winery. No doubt very much hygiene focused wineries will then of course clean them further, but it really does mean that the product itself of course is going to be fairly protected. Also, it is inexpensive to manufacture and comes in a range of colors. And that's important because there is certainly an aesthetic to wine. Of course, you look at traditional wine regions in Germany, where you have the blue bottle of the Mosel, you have the brown bottle of the Rhine, for instance. No legal laws around these, but certainly traditional connotations behind them. So colors as well. And that's quite important also in terms of the protection of the wine, because brown bottles and then green have very strong protection against UV light. But then there are wine styles that are in clear bottles, which don't have that protection, but aesthetically, they're quite pleasing to look at, like rosés, for instance, due to the fact of that nice sort of pinkish color, for instance. So it's very rare that a rosé producer will hide the rosé color in a green or brown bottle, for example. In principle, also, glass is 100% recyclable. But that depends on color as well, about their availability of recycling. And glass remains the best option for aging of the wine because it is impermeable to oxygen. The only age will come through the top of the bottle, the fill of the bottle. So depending what the closure is on the bottle. But the bottle itself, of course, is impermeable to oxygen. Disadvantages of using glass. Glass has a high carbon footprint initially because of the heat needed to manufacture it. And then also it more sort of indirectly through transport costs. It is heavy to transport, specifically if it is, of course, traversing great distances on ships and containers. So maybe, you know, coming from somewhere like New Zealand to the UK market, for example. But they are heavy to transport. Also, glass is brittle and it's fairly fragile. So we'll know this. No doubt some of you have dropped a bottle before and the result normally isn't that positive. So fragility of glass can be an issue. And glass bottles are rigid. So once a bottle of wine has been opened, it is then subject to rapid oxidation. And that's with the closure, the link to the closure, one I think covered more in part 2. And then I've already kind of alluded to this, but those wines that are stored in clear bottles, so non-green or brown, they can be spoiled by light strike from fluorescent or natural light. So this is fluorescent lights in shops and supermarkets, or UV light, for example. And this can produce problematic notes around volatile sulfur compounds, producing kind of those kind of drains and rotten notes possible. The green and brown bottles give much better protection, but of course there are still wine styles today in the world which are bottled in crystal clear bottles, so you can see the product. Rosé is the really great example behind that. Okay, so that's glass done in terms of advantages and disadvantages. I won't go into each of the next categories in that way. I'm just going to got one slide of most of the next ones apart from bag and box, but we'll go through each of these. So first of all, the alternative to glass bottles is plastic bottles, and you'll see there's a range of them just here with their screw cap top part to it. So this is polyethylene terephthalate. This is PET. So this is a form of plastic which is quite light. It's about 1/8 of the weight of glass. And I was probably in my pronunciation of the second word 1/8 of the way there. But it's tough, it's inexpensive, and in principle, it should be recyclable. But it must be lined with a barrier to oxygen if it has to be impermeable and therefore given a relatively long shelf life. If not, the wine should be very quickly consumed. Also, PET can be used for a range of sizes, so including standard bottle size or the single serve ready to drink like you've got on the right hand side. So no doubt some of you have been to maybe a festival or a sporting event where they sell these in servings. You get a little bottle with a little glass sometimes attached to it, or maybe on a train or transport or something like that as well. These are readily available. So these are what we call the ready to drink market. It's also well suited to wines with a limited shelf life and for quick consumption and informal settings, like I mentioned. And certainly on things like planes too, where it could be a bit of a hazard if you're using glass so much because of the turbulence. Special filling equipment is required as the PET bottles are inflated at filling. So you'll need the equipment behind this, or certainly you'll need to hire the people and the equipment for this. Then we have bag-in-box. Doesn't sound too tremendously romantic, but I will go through here what bag-in-box exactly is, and then we'll go through the advantages and disadvantages. So this consists of a cardboard box, like you'll see at the top of your picture, that houses a flexible bag inside to the right-hand side. And then the picture to the bottom left is, of course, what it will look like when it's placed in there. The flexible bag is usually made of very thin aluminium foil. So that is the English way of pronunciating aluminium. Sorry for the Americans out there. This acts as a barrier to oxygen, and it's covered on both sides by a suitable plastic. Another form of this bag is made from plastic that gives some protection from oxygen and is resistant to cracking, unlike aluminium foil, which can, with some kind of severe beating, can be cracked. The wine must have slightly higher sulfur dioxide levels than wines that go in glass containers. That's really to counter oxidation. It must also have a low final dissolved oxygen level. There must be no head space and low carbon dioxide as well. And the last is to avoid bag bulging. So producers, really, to get this no headspace and all of these key things, will need specialist equipment once again to fill. So they must use a high quality tap as well, and this is where really most oxygen will affect this wine. So if there's a low quality tap, this will allow oxidation and spoil the wine. So high quality taps, the part, of course, where the wine will come out, that is what we need for this. Advantages of bag-in-box. So the advantages includes a flexible pour size. So of course you turn the tap on and you pour away to your heart's content. Usually very good if you've had a very bad day, or potentially you are partying or something along those lines. It also has relatively good protection against oxygen after the wine has been poured. And we're talking about not into the glass, but what's left behind in the bag, because the bag will collapse inside the box. It has a range of sizes as well. It's very typical for around 1.5 to 3 litres is quite normal. So therefore quite suitable for home and for commercial use. The boxes, therefore, because they are a square or rectangular box format, they are also easy to store. They fit very neatly together like a brick on brick scenario. And they also have a low environmental impact due to the lighter options of transport and also the options of recycling. Disadvantages. There aren't many actually of bag-in-box. The shelf life is a range of normally around 6 to 9 months, sometimes a little bit more if the product within bag-in-box is higher quality. You must understand, with bag-in-box, normally what goes into them tends to be the more inexpensive mass side of the market. I'm not saying that's always the case. There are some very interesting companies today which are focusing on quality wine going in bag-in-box, and then also guaranteeing some good shelf life and some good age behind these wine styles. But normally speaking, we are talking about fairly sort of mass-produced wines, which normally are best consumed quite quickly, certainly within a year of the purchase. And then the last one I put down there is really one of a more kind of traditional nature. It's not a glass bottle. We're so used to wine being served in a glass bottle. We're used to the pull of the cork, the pop of the cork. And bags in boxes, I mean, the phrase bag in box doesn't sound too romantic or appealing. No doubt they make them look good. Of course, there's very good marketing on the side of these boxes, but really there still is a bit of negativity around that style. Then we have what are called brick formats or Tetra Pak formats. Now, it's often referred to as Tetra Packs, and that's due to the leading manufacturer of these styles. And these are made of paper card with plastic layers and an aluminium foil layer that excludes oxygen and light on the inside. The package can be entirely filled with wine, therefore this will exclude oxygen with the right filling equipment. And it has been accepted by consumers at the lower price points again. You often will find that the bottle size, the Tetra Pak size is somewhere like maybe like a 750 or a litre is quite typical. So whereas bag-in-box tends to be, up to 3 litres, these are smaller sizes. So therefore the overall cost is much lower. And in places like Germany, where price point is very important, it tends to be quite successful in that country. There are more and more attractive and contemporary designs on these. You'll see some of the pictures here to make them look less like a milk carton and more like a wine in a Tetra Pak. And you see these got kind of funky shapes to them as well. But as mentioned, the filling equipment is an investment. It is expensive. So some producers will outsource filling their Tetra Packs. Then we have pouches as well. So pouches are similar to the bags that are inside bag-in-boxes. They are available in larger formats too. So you often find around 1.5 litre and also in single serve like you see in this picture. So that's another format. And then finally, something which is in fact really taking off across the wine scene is the canned wines. So these are often ring pull cans. So one pull off and that opens the top. It offers many advantages as a package for a wine to be consumed early. It is lightweight, it is robust, it is easy to open with one peel, and it's impermeable to oxygen, and the content of this can is recyclable as well. The aluminium has to be lined with plastic to avoid being attacked by the acidity of the wine. So there will be an inside impermeable layer. And the packaging companies continue to experiment with cans, which prove attractive, of course, to the ready-to-drink market, certainly targeting festivals, transport, like we mentioned. And there are lots of lovely designs today, and some really, really good, well-made wines are being produced in can format today. Absolutely no harm in it whatsoever. The filling equipment is a big investment, and producers will generally outsource the filling of cans. Okay, so that brings me to the final part of this presentation. Just jumping back so you can see, part 2 is talking about closures. So the world of cork, glass closures, diam closures, all those kind of things comes next in part 2 and part 3 as well on oxygen management. These are only available on my e-learning portal. That's www.winewithjimmy.com. So please do go over there and have a look at all the options available to you. If you do have any comments or questions or concerns, you can get in touch with me by commenting on this video below on the world of YouTube, or by the social media you see at the bottom of every slide, or direct at Wine with Jimmy. But thank you so much for tuning in. If you do find yourself in London town, in the wonderful United Kingdom, then come and see me. As you know, I have schools and wine bars. So come and see me for a class, a glass, or a bottle. Bye.